How to make sure your success does not lead to unhelpful expectations. Now, why would success lead to unhelpful expectations? If you are succeeding as a player, shouldn't that lead to more confidence moving forward? Yes, if you look at it in a certain way. But what can also happen is you start to experience success, and so now you begin expecting this success. And when you expect this success, you almost put this pressure on yourself that you have to succeed. And what can happen is you lose sight of what helped you succeed in the first place. A really great example of this is from a punter that I was working with this past fall. We were really working on simplifying his thinking for his punts, not trying to overthink his punts and not putting pressure on himself. So we had him really just focus on simple objectives for each punt. And what happened was he was punting good, he was feeling great, and so then he tried to punt the hell out of the ball. He just wanted to see how far could I get it. The balls were flying really well, and so he just wanted to see, let me see if I can get this one a little bit farther. But by trying to punt it harder, he lost sight of the simple focus he'd had and the looseness with which he had been punting. And so he actually ended up having the worst punt of his day on the one that he tried harder to do. This is on a very small scale. What I see on a bigger scale happen to a lot of athletes, where you experience success, so then you almost put this expectation on yourself and you try and you lose sight of where the success came from in the first place. So what I talked to him about was, you got to remember that the reason the punts were going better was because you changed what you were focusing on. You kicked and you punted more naturally, and you were looser. We talked a lot about punting at about 70 to 75% of his, or swinging at about 70 to 75%, so that he was a lot looser and more relaxed. And the funny thing was, the ball went a little bit farther. I see this also a lot with golfers on a little bit of a bigger scale, especially if they're playing one tournament or if they're playing a couple tournaments. There was this female golfer that I was working with, and she was playing in a tournament, and she was doing really well for the front nine. But then what happened was she started to get the feeling of, okay, now I have to keep this up. So she was experiencing success, and then that success led to her feeling like, I have to keep this up. So she put this expectation and this pressure on herself. That expectation and that pressure led to stress, which led to her performing worse on the back nine. Now, this is a very, very tricky thing because, when you experience success, you want to use that success to increase your confidence and make you feel like, okay, I've been doing well, I can keep doing well, but it's so easy for it to actually slip into, I've been doing well, I have to keep doing well. Not I'm going to keep doing well, but I have to keep doing well, which puts that unnecessary pressure on yourself. So what can you do about this? Well, there are two very simple kind of tips that I have, but the simplicity of them does not mean that they're not difficult to apply. And the first one is, you need to remember what helped you succeed in the first place. That punter example, I said we were focusing on, swinging at about 70 to 75%, and he was focusing on a simple objective with his punts. That was what led to the good punts in the first place. The punts ended up being a byproduct of this very simple process. The same thing was true with the female golfer, and the same thing is true with most of the athletes that I work on. We come up with these very simple cues and simple objectives for them to focus on, and then they need to make sure that they remember that's what's leading to the success in the first place. So for yourself, if you find that you experience some success and then you end up putting pressure on yourself, and success actually leads to expectations and hurts you instead of the success leading to confidence, you need to always remind yourself what led to the success in the first place. A really great exercise that you can do is you can honestly write a letter to yourself. And this is a letter where you can explain everything that you do or everything you've been doing that's led to you performing well. I really recommend you do this when you're in the midst of, one of those kind of streaks where you're performing really well, whether it's one practice or whether it's, one game a week, 2 weeks, whatever it may be. But you want to get detailed so that in the future, if you start to underperform, you can remind yourself, these are the most important things for me to focus on. Don't get caught up in this outcome. Focus on these process aspects of my game, these steps that are helping me succeed. The second tip is that you want to set yourself some very clear objectives based on the process. These objectives are going to be the cues that I've been talking about, right? The cues that I mentioned for the punter, the cues that I use for golfers, and these cues are going to be process elements of your game, so pieces of the process that lead to your success that you can focus on. And something that's also very important is you want to make sure they are controllable. Make them controllable and make them Simple. With the punter, he was a high-level punter, but we had him focusing on swinging at 70-75% and just focusing on a very simple objective. That's it. With a lot of golfers, it's focusing on a single swing thought. With a baseball or softball player, it might be focusing on staying balanced at the plate or watching the ball all the way into their bat. Very, very simple things, but things that are part of the process that, while they might be simple, they are incredibly important to your success. So for you as an athlete, if you do notice this pattern of I experience success, which leads to expectations, which causes me to underperform, you want to make sure you're always remembering what led to the success in the first place, and then make sure you are setting those very clear objectives for yourself going into games. Now, one final little piece of this is, if you notice that pattern happen where you perform well, it leads to expectations, and then you underperform, and then you perform well again, I want you to ask yourself, why do I perform well after I haven't been performing well? A lot of times it's because you let go of those expectations because you think, now I have nothing to lose. This is something I see a lot where the athlete has been coming off a string of bad games, and so then they can turn it around quicker, then they can keep that success up moving forward because they haven't been playing well. So there's no expectation, so they can focus more on performing just naturally, relaxed, and focus more on the process. But that should tell you that it's important, it's very important that I keep focused on that process part of my game. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training.